So, a couple of tips for working with interest problems. First, look for the wording in the problem to indicate what type of interest is involved in the problem you're working on. Is it simple interest? If it's simple interest, you're going to have a pretty simple formula, A equals P plus PRT. Whereas if it's compound interest, you're going to have a more complicated formula, A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the NT. And notice those formulas are quite a bit different, so it's important to look for that wording. For instance, I've got three examples below. In the first one, as you read through, you invest 12,000 and earning 5% APR compounded quarterly. So there's a problem that you're going to be working this with the formula for compound interest. Whereas in the second example, it says find the amount of interest you would earn from investing $900 for 2 years if the simple interest account, there we go, before I go any further, that's simple interest, so I'm using the simple interest formula. So you want to watch the wording to make sure you're using the correct formula. The other thing I wanted to mention to watch out for is that sometimes you're going to be asked for the total amount that you have left in the account, or A, at the end of a certain time period, the future value that you have in the account. And sometimes you're just going to be asked for the interest. And what I want to remind you is that the interest is really A minus what you started with P. So A is calculated by subtracting where you started from the total amount. And some problems are going to ask you for the total amount. Some are going to ask you just for the interest that you've earned over that time period. And to find the interest, you have to adjust the A by subtracting out the P. So we can see that in our examples below. If we look carefully, in the first problem, it says you invest 12,000 in an account earning 5% compounded quarterly. How much will you have in the account after 5 years? How much will you have in the account after 5 years? That's asking for the amount, A. Whereas in the second example, it says find the amount of interest you would earn, and the interest would be A minus P. So you need to look carefully at what it's asking you for. My third tip would be to be careful about whether you're being asked to find a future value or a present value, because you will use a slightly different format of the compound interest formula if you're looking for future value. That's when you're calculating A, or when you're finding the present value, which is when you're calculating P. So watch out for that. And in fact, in this third example here, notice it says how much do you have to start with, so that means you're finding P. Given that you want to have a down payment, a future value, A, of 25,000. So being careful about what you're trying to find is also really important. And lastly, and this is a big one, watch your decimals carefully. We've got a lot of decimals involved with the percents, the interest rates, 5%, 4.5%, 5.8% in just these three examples. If you move your decimal point in the wrong direction, if you don't move it far enough, if you move it too far, your answer is totally going to come out wrong. So be very careful to write your decimals out correctly and enter them into your calculator correctly.